In this video, we're going to discuss law of cosine. Law of cosine is particularly used for any triangle, especially non-right triangle, when we are given a three sides length. Sorry, I should say length of all three sides. If length of all three sides are given, it would be useful to use law of cosine to find an appropriate angle or any angle. So first, let's see how the law of cosine is formed. So let's derive law of cosine from any triangle. So first we're given a triangle right here, and we have angle C right here, and length A, B, and C. Okay. So first we're going to express the length X in terms of cosine C. So let's find cosine C. Cosine of angle C right here will be X over A from this smaller right triangle, right? So write that. We have X over A. So let's say it says actually express H, right? So we're going to solve for H by multiplying A both sides. So that gives us X equals A times cosine of C, angle C. So we have this so far. So let's keep that in mind. Second step, using Pythagorean theorem, express A square. A square. Well, we know that A square equals H square plus X square. So A square equals X square plus H square. Okay, so also just keep that in mind. We'll come back to this in a second. Step 3, using the Pythagorean theorem, express C square. C square. So C square in right triangle, this second right triangle, C square equals H square plus B minus X square. So C square equals H square plus B minus X. That's the length right here. This length right here. Entire thing square. We do need to multiply this out though. So let's multiply out. We have H square plus B square minus 2bx plus X square. So that's the same thing as C square. Okay. So using answers from 2 and 3, verify that A square plus B square minus 2bx equals to C square. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, let's begin from 3 first. Let's look at this. This tells us that C square equals this expression right here, just from the Pythagorean theorem. So C square equals H square plus B square minus 2bx plus X square. But let's look at here. We have H square plus X square, right? H square plus X square. From the step 2, it tells us that X plus H square is same as A square. So instead of adding these two quantity, I can combine these two as A square. So what we have here is C square equals to A square, because these two things we can write as A square, plus B square minus 2bx. Okay. So we have C square equals A square plus B square minus 2 times B times X. Okay. So then we can go one more step, one more substitution. What is X? Well, this is step 5. Using from answer 1, express C squares using C cosine theta, cosine C. So we're here from this expression with C square equals A square plus B square minus 2 times B. But what is X? We know that x equals a times cosine c. A times cosine c. Remember, the c right here is an angle. So, what do we have here? This is actually the law of cosine. And oftentimes we write it in a way that I'm about to write, just so that we can remember easily. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And this sounds maybe some familiar to you. If not, that's okay. C squared plus a squared equals a squared plus b squared is a Pythagorean theorem given a right triangle. But if it's not a right triangle, even if it's a right triangle, this also applies. But we have then, so c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2 times a times b. And that length a and b you can think as these two sides. A and b, 2 times a and b, multiply by this is b, multiply by cosine of angle c. So this is the law of cosine. Okay. So looking at 5 in the triangle, we can also express a squared and b squared similar way. We can do this step again using a squared and b squared. And let me write it. Two other law of cosine. A squared, write the b squared plus c squared, two other length. That is not a. Square them, add them. Minus 2 times b times c times cosine of corresponding angle to a. Corresponding angle to a is this angle. Let's label it a and let's label it b. So this is a. And you can guess also similarly b squared then is same as a squared plus c squared minus 2 times a times c times cosine of b. Okay? So these three things right here are law of cosine. So what does it mean in terms of a triangle? Let me maybe explain in more general term, although we kind of deduce it in general term. The way we look at it is, let's say I have any triangle, okay, and I have this angle theta, and here's an angle x, and think as the x is facing the angle theta, and I have other two side lengths s and t. So using law of cosine, since we have three lengths, what I can do is I can rewrite this as x squared equals s squared plus t squared. S squared plus t squared minus 2 times s times t times cosine of the facing angle, in this case theta. Okay. So if you're given a three length, we can relate the three lengths with cosine theta. That's why this is known as law of cosine. Okay. So let's see how we can apply this. And without all the three lengths doesn't have to be always a given. If it's the fact that they're given a two length and an angle between them, we can also use this to find this length also, and vice versa. So three things must be given: all three length or two lengths with one angle, for the law of cosine to be effective. Okay. So let's look at examples. Here it says actually find the length x, right? So we're going to find this length x. That means we have to relate this angle right here. Okay. So let's write the law of cosine. Law of cosine says that the length we're focusing on, x squared, equals square of two other lengths. 7 squared plus 18.2 squared minus each of these individually. 2 times 7 times 18.2. Make sure to these number not square. Multiply by cosine of the facing angle, which is 118 degrees. So we just found x squared. But we're finding x, so we have to square root this. And here we're not in a particular standard position or coordinate. So although we'll get plus minus because we're thinking as a triangle here in terms of geometrical sense, lengths are always positive. So no need to write positive plus minus. So we're taking as a positive length right now. 2 times, 2 times 7 times 18.2 times cosine of 118 degree. So this is the acceptable answer for us. This is all you need to write. Homework will ask you for one more step. Just type this in a calculator, internet calculator. It'll give you a number, to 10 decimal, 3 decimals, whatever the homework's asking. Just type in a calculator and type the numerical value. But for exam, this is acceptable. This is all you need to do. Just show that how you're using it. So look at this example. In this case, it's actually asking us to find this angle C right here. Okay, and we actually call it angle x degrees. You can use either label C or X. So this is very powerful because now if you have a 3 length of a triangle, we can find all 3 angles. Of course, I can find this. I can also find this and find this using law of cosine. So law of cosine we need to use twice to find all 3 angles, right? Because once we know 2 angles, we can find the third angle by 180 degree, right? Subtraction. But here we're just finding this angle. So that means we have to look at the facing length, 25 centimeter. So 25 centimeter square equals 27 centimeter square plus 21 square minus the subtraction. Be careful, it's always subtracting. 2 times 27 times 21. 2 other length. This one without squaring. Multiply by cosine of x degrees. So this is what we want to find, right? Oops. This is the angle we want to find. In order to find that, we need to actually isolate the cosine x. So we need to do some algebra. So we need to subtract these 2 values. Again, for exam, you can just leave it like this. Homework, you actually have to type the final answer in a calculator. So I subtract these 2. Then now have this times this, right? Negative 2 times 27 times 21. Divide by this both sides, this number. So I have 25 square minus 27 square minus 21 square. Divide by negative 2 times 27 times 21 equals cosine of x degree. Okay. So how do we find this x degree? Here we can actually apply, and we should apply inverse cosine. So we can think as we're finding our cosine of this value. So you can think as we're applying our cosine here, our cosine here. And one important thing about our cosine you may remember is that the range is restricted between 0 and pi, or 0 degrees to 180 degrees. But that is okay within the context of a triangle, because triangles always have the sum of angle 180, right? So this applying our cosine, we have to be careful. We cannot always do to any situation. We are allowed to do in this situation because we're specifically dealing with the triangle. Okay, so we have 25 square minus 27 square minus 21 square over negative 2 times 27 times 21 equals x degree. So here, just on a side note, you can think this as arc cosine of x degrees. These cancels out, just for in this case, because we're already dealing with this range. to write x degrees. 180 degrees. Since we already know that, we can cancel that out. So this is it. I mean, this is an angle. If you type this in a calculator, it will give us a degree in angle. Okay. But for us, this is acceptable for homework. Type this in a calculator. It'll give you the numerical answer. Round that to 2 or 3 decimal, whatever the homework's asking. Just type that as a homework answer. So this is how we use the law of cosine. Okay. So you have to remember. Again, don't try to think as remember all three things right here. All three things essentially tells us the same thing. One equation. This all equations the same thing. You think as if I want to focus on this length, square this. This square equals to other two lengths square, b and a square, minus 2 times a times b times cosine of the facing angle. So that's the format of the law of cosine. So try to remember by relating to triangle. Don't just try to remember the ABC, 2AB cosine C. Try to relate in a given triangle, like I did even here, right?